suppression in Ohio is just passing a law today. The governor's going to sign it that prohibits weekend voting. Let us vote. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow Democrats, and those who wish you were. It's a great day, a little chilly around the edges, but nonetheless, we're here to discuss some rather hot issues. So as you warm up, as you listen to our commentary and our research and our opinions, I hope that it'll hit home and encourage you to do the most important thing a citizen of this country can do, and that is to vote. We cannot sustain a decent, equitable governmental system if we don't vote. And there are people dying in the streets all over this world just for the right to vote. And we have people who are snubbing their noses and saying, it doesn't count. So please, look in your heart and realize that our democracy cannot survive if you don't vote. And with that little bit of a sermon, but it's heartfelt, believe me, I want to introduce the panel very quickly. To my far right is George Thompson, our treasurer and man of many talents, researcher, etc. And to my far left is Tom Patterson, another very active member of our Democratic community. To my immediate right, Marsha Hunter, again, a great activist and a very knowledgeable Democratic proponent. And to my immediate left, Gillian Kratzer, who is not only a good, active Democrat and very concerned about what and how we do. She also manages our website and our Facebook account and has done an absolutely incredible job. Tom has moved our plain speaking programs on up to YouTube. So we are getting the voice out. So please, if you know somebody who might want to hear what we have to say, you can refer them to those areas. Okay, today we are going to hit the very first issue, and it is generally referred to as the discrimination and the discussion and proliferation of laws that are being passed or that even exist today that discriminate against women and the LBGT community. And it is almost criminal, which is turning out to be subjugating our women and our minorities who are of different sexual persuasions and so on from the right to participate in society. And I know Gillian has spent a lot of time involved in presenting the rational side to why we shouldn't be doing things like this. And we'll start off with Gillian. What's your overview of where we are in this country? And I want to say voter rights is also part of that.
Absolutely. Well, there have been a lot of really sort of scary laws passed, but I will say that there are some ways that we're going in really great directions. Just yesterday, U.S. District Judge in Texas overturned Texas's ban on same-sex marriage, and I think you'll enjoy this. He quoted Antonin Scalia to do it. So
I love it.
That was beautiful, but. He wrote in his opinion, without a rational relation to a legitimate governmental purpose, state-imposed inequality can find no refuge in our United States Constitution. And, that's a rationale that is honestly sweeping the courts all over this country. And I think that we're going to see more and more same-sex marriage bans overturned for that very reason.
Okay. Commentary from the other panelists. Marsha?
Well, you mentioned women's health state laws that are coming up. They're restricting contraception. They're cutting funds to Planned Parenthood. They have state-mandated medically unnecessary ultrasounds. They're putting taxes on abortions, abortion waiting periods. They're forcing women to tell their employers why they want birth control.
Yeah.
That's in one state.
And that's an invasion of your privacy. Who,
And I mean,
who should
honestly,
know?
didn't we cover
It's
this
a-
in Griswold versus Connecticut, like, in the 60s?
but
I mean, really.
These
Right.
legislators don't accept that.
Yeah. Well, a legislator in Virginia just last week called women hosts.
A host instead
Pregnant
of a
women,
mother.
a host. Some call them mothers.
Well,
You know?
and along with what you're saying, one of the most recent things that probably will be eventually overturned as unconstitutional, Alabama has a pending bill
Yes.
that if you go to the emergency room because you're having a miscarriage, the hospital is allowed to turn you down for services. Because like what you're saying, the woman is just a host.
Yeah.
That is not, they don't have any legal rights in some of these states. And I'm sure that some of that will be overturned as unconstitutional. The other thing they're doing, of course, on the state level is this voter suppression. And there's all different kinds of voter suppression laws. Of course, we have one in Pennsylvania where you are asked for an ID in November. They still haven't gotten the law passed the courts to actually require an ID, but they're allowed to ask for an ID, which a lot of people are saying is harassment, and some people will shy away from going to the polls because of it.
Yeah.
The biggest thing with the states with voter suppression, it usually requires some form of an ID. Having passed in 16 states, Michigan and Minnesota have pending legislation in this regard, and voter suppression laws have already been passed in Maine, Vermont, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Ohio, Illinois, Virginia, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, Texas, and Kansas. And as you can see with that group of states where voter suppression has been passed, the key states for national elections for President of the United States,
Absolutely.
Florida, Texas, Ohio, Pennsylvania are all states that normally swing elections. So they're trying to basically steal elections through voter
That's right.
suppression laws.
And the thing that you have to do, all you have to do is there are several charts that are now available. The 90%, 95% of the states that are passing these egregious, these horrible laws are controlled by the Republicans.
Yes,
the
absolutely.
governor, the Senate, and the lower house, even in Pennsylvania. And there's one thing I don't know, I didn't hear you mention, the union suppression. Our own state senator, a guy by the name of Eichelberger, is one of the prime sponsors of an anti-public sector union bill, which will forbid public employers from withholding the voluntary contribution of union dues through the payroll deduction system. And
Well,
I mean, it's an attempt to destroy unions.
And the Republicans have been very good at labeling these things where they sound like they're something good. And for the uneducated voter, they sound like something good, and they're actually against the workers, which are what the majority of us are in Blair County's interests. They call right to work, which is actually a union busting bill to try to bust the unions, which are one of the last vehicles where the middle class can make a decent income. And in Pennsylvania, they're calling it paycheck protection.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
what paycheck protection does is keeps the unions from collecting their union dues right out of your check, where the unions would have to expend more money to try to collect money from people that are in their unions that want to pay the money anyway. And the unions right now are about the only organization that can raise any money, and it's nowhere near as much as what the Koch brothers and these kind of
Certainly.
right-wing groups are raising, that you don't even know where the money's coming from because of the laws that were passed.
And let me add one other thing here. The people are being led to believe that the collection of union dues is an affront to the citizens because those union dues are being used for political purposes. That is a bold-faced lie.
Absolutely.
It is illegal in Pennsylvania and many other states for union dues of any kind to be used for political purposes. And there are political action committees formed by public sector employees, which this bill, by the way, is opposed to, is not for private sector employees.
Right.
But it's so all public sector employees have PACs, like every other, the bankers have them, the doctors have them, everybody has them.
Certainly.
And they're voluntary contributions, and rarely do you see every single member of the union putting money into an educator's PAC, because that's a voluntary contribution and it's separate from union dues.
Right.
And most people on the streets believe what they're being told, that union dues are being used for political purposes, and that's a bold-faced lie.
And furthering this misleading, talk about these things, I don't know if you saw in the Altoona Mirror, just a few days ago, there was an article that said, the title of which was something to the effect of, poll says that some union families support paycheck protection. And it was this poll conducted by a right-leaning, polling place. And one of the questions on it, one of the questions that was taken exception to, asked whether the person was in favor of taxpayer money going to political campaigns, which again, just it's absolutely
it's stating a false premise and expecting people to respond.
Yeah, it was a hugely skewed poll. There was no control.
I'm telling
group,
you,
and,
those people on the other side of the aisle have the most efficient department of lies and half-truths I've ever seen. George, you...
Well, first of all, I certainly agree. I have a printout here from the National Right to Work organization, which is opposed to unions, just so we know who we're talking about.
Yeah.
And they state right in their own literature that their purpose is, if you think that your union dues are being used for political purposes, to report it to them, because it's illegal.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
they themselves are admitting that for political union dues to be used for political purposes is illegal.
Yeah, and we don't do it.
Now it's also true, though, that people, once you vote, you do have to pay union dues, and it's my understanding, and maybe you can correct me if I'm inaccurate here, that the separation, if you pay a union, there is a component that is used for negotiation with management, wherever the organization is. And you, if you belong to that particular organization, you are required to pay union dues. It's not
It's
voluntary.
called a, the thought went over my head, an agency shop. In other words, if a person, and the person has the right today, anywhere in this state or this country, to even deny. There's no such thing as a closed shop anymore. The railroads in Altoona were the last bastion of closed shop, which means you had to be a union member or you couldn't get a job. Now, in public sector, any public sector entity that has a union representing them, whether it's AFSCME, PSE, PSEA, SEIU, if you don't want to be a union member and you're working there, there is what they call the agency fee, which is expected to be paid by everybody who enjoys the benefits of negotiations.
Fair share.
Fair share. That's what,
In
not
other
agency. I'm
words, it
sorry.
costs money
Fair
for
share,
the
thank
union
you.
to do research.
Not agency shop. Fair share, and it is done by a consortium of economic people who take a look at how much is spent by these unions on administration, public relations, and stuff like that. Public relations has nothing to do with your job, so that would be not. So, in other words, if a teacher's paying $500 a year to belong to PSCA and NEA and the local union, then if you don't want to be a card-carrying member, right now the percentage is about 80%. 80% of the union dues are used to support and enhance employee benefits and work conditions. So that's fair share.
And some of the people are objecting to that. And my analogy is, let's just use the United States or Pennsylvania as an example. A lot of people disagree with taxes.
Yeah.
And maybe they disagree with what the government does. So we're going to just make it voluntary, that you pay taxes. Yeah, how do you think that's going to work
Well,
out?
obviously it won't.
We'll make the federal government, a better example, make the federal government go door to door collecting taxes instead of having it deducted from your paycheck.
Yeah.
That's basically what they're saying here.
Yeah.
Once you're in an organization and the majority of the workers have said we want a union to represent us, it's not really fair to have people freeloading.
That's exactly what they are, freeloaders. Yeah.
And this is sort of the sentiment expressed in the article that Gillian brought out, and it's an often expressed sentiment. And then furthermore, the unions really are being charged as the people that are causing the United States economically to go down the tubes, or, that strain of thought. And the trouble is, let's use Blair County. We're totally familiar with Blair County. Our wages here are actually low compared to wages in the rest of, or not the rest, but many parts of Pennsylvania.
State,
yeah.
And somehow, this should cause our economy to prosper. We have low wages. Let's bring in minimum wage. This idea that somehow if you increase minimum wage that you're going to ruin things. Well, it's not documented by research.
Well, the statistics have shown that even though the CBO had even said there may be 500,000 people who might lose their jobs for whatever reason under this, but they don't point out that there's about 4 to 5 million people who are going to increase dramatically their ability to live a more normal life. And so the fact is, no bill that's ever been passed, to my knowledge, has been beneficial to every single person in the country. Particularly when it comes to money. There's always someone who's going to be denied. Tom, you had a comment.
Business leaders have been fighting raising minimum wage ever since they first raised minimum wage, and that's always been the old argument. They're going to lose jobs. We're going to have to cut back on employees. Well, if eating out in this area, these places are minimally staffed. They have cut back so much on employees. And here's, I just printed this out. In the right-to-work states, with a few exceptions, but most of the southern states have the highest level of poverty, people living in it, that their wages have gone down since the right-to-work laws have passed. And Pennsylvania is probably going to suffer the same fate. I don't know how we can get worse, but it's possible.
Well, and 21 states have tried to pass right-to-work laws during the last year, and only one actually passed it, and that was Tennessee, of all places. And if you followed the thing with the Volkswagen plant in Tennessee, we lost the union vote at the Volkswagen plant. But one of the reasons that the people were afraid to vote for the union was that the governor and the legislature of that state said that if it became a union shop, that they would get rid of their tax breaks for Volkswagen, and there would be a possibility that the plant would leave the state.
Which Volkswagen denied, by the way.
Right. Volkswagen
In fact, they
wanted the union.
Germany has these worker councils that are similar to unions.
In fact, even though the union vote was they lost in that Volkswagen election, Volkswagen itself said, hey, we still need a mechanism. Our tradition in Germany is to work with workers. So they're part of the
They don't call them unions,
partners.
but And along with what Tom was saying about the wages being so low in these red states, and if you watch Schultz at all, at the 5 o'clock in the afternoon, he has been throwing up, and I haven't seen the last couple of months, but there is a chart that he has that shows that the states that use the most governmental services and get the most benefits from the government, food stamps and welfare and things of this sort, are the red states.
Yes.
And the reason they are is because what Tom was just saying, all of these people have the lowest rates of income, and they have the right to work laws, and that's a stupid title. Everyone has the right to work.
Right.
But when you do work, you have an obligation to support the people that are making sure your job is secure.
This is like the Affordable Care Act. You have the right to work for less money.
Yeah.
That's basically what it comes down to. You want to fight for the right to work for less money, just like you'd want to fight for the right to not have health care. that's affordable.
Or not to be discharged for just cause. When you have a right-to-work state, you are what they call an at-will employee.
Exactly.
There is no mechanism to protect your job.
And something we should point out about minimum wage workers especially is that women make up almost two-thirds of minimum wage workers. And these are people who, the vast majority of whom have no paid sick days. They are just one minor financial disaster away from complete economic ruin.
Mm-hmm.
And, how do we live right now? And this, by the way, is at a time, women making up two-thirds of minimum wage workers, this is at a time when most college graduates are women.
Yes, indeed.
More than men.
Yeah.
So, where is this disconnect coming in? How do we fix it?
And you see, and then again, I try to appeal to the voters. People say you're a Democrat or a Republican, and we as Democrats say we are the party of the people, because each of these issues has a direct impact on the lives of all these people. And then I say to my Republican colleagues, if you support the Republican Party, you are supporting the destruction of unions. You are supporting the denial of benefits to women, to the minorities of this country. When you support the Republicans, you are forcing people who can't vote during the regular work week to go without voting because they're getting rid of extended periods of voting. They're getting rid of Sunday and Saturday voting. I mean, how can a Republican in all conscience stand up and say, I support screwing all these kind of people?
Yeah, I'd like to get back to the voter suppression.
Right.
I mean, it's not just voter ID that's at issue. Other states allow voting over an extended period, 2-week period of time, let's say. They allow voting on Sundays, days that people could actually, who work, go and vote.
Yeah.
These various things for voting are in other states. My daughter had lived in Oregon, and she claimed routinely they just mail you the ballot in Oregon, and you fill it out and mail it back. Here it's a major obstacle to try to get an absentee ballot. You really have to pledge that you are sick or you're working somewhere, and how do you ever plan? I mean, it takes a while to get these absentee ballots, and if you're working and you're all of a sudden assigned to go out of an area, you just lost your right to vote. Where are these issues? Our voter records here, the percentage of turnout is very low.
It's
people
abominable.
Should be worried about getting more people to vote, not trying to pass laws to restrict voting.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to take our first break right now, but I think we ought to be focusing on trying to counter the lies that are being spent out in the public by the other party, and they pass these laws. I think we ought to start using the fear factor like they do. If you vote for the Republicans, you're going to lose, and here are the 7 things you're going to lose. Let's take our first break, and we'll come back and wrap up this one and go on to I'm sure, some other temporaceous titles. Okay, thanks.
Elementary school, 82% of 4th graders feel that bullying is a problem.
9 out of 10 5th graders have seen a friend or classmate being bullied.
And 1 in 2 6th graders say they have been bullied.
Put a stop to bullying at Fort 10.
Fill out a bully form, put it in a bully box in the cafeteria, office, or library. And we'll offer advice during the announcements and on our bully blog.
All without using your name.
Oh, we're back on. Okay. Any other commentary we have on the topics we talked about, these laws and the whole attempt by the Republican Party to diminish and deny and take away some of the basic American freedoms we have? Anybody else have a commentary as we close on that
Frank,
topic?
You've said this many, many times. I think people need to take a long, hard look at why they vote. And they have to start looking at their own economics. All this value voting and all this kind of stuff, there are people that have very low incomes that are voting Republican, and it is against their own interests economically. And they have to start realizing that if they don't start voting in a manner that votes for their own economic well-being, soon they will have no economic well-being whatsoever.
That's a good point. The panel, I'm sure the panel all agrees. And that's one thing, these special interest items, and I'm not going to name them again, but you can't be voting on those things that have nothing to do with your economic life.
Well, here's just one issue. They cut food stamps. I'm talking about low-income people. And these people are voting Republicans, and the Republicans are the ones that cut their food stamps.
Right. And they want to cut them again further.
Yeah.
They do. Okay, let's go down and take a look at our next item down below. We talked about right to work. Now, the Get Out to Vote campaign. We talked about voting. And I know that we don't have very many political races in Blair County that have a challenge on the Democratic side. Simply because, and I want to stress this to the viewers, I just got the latest printout from Harrisburg that in Blair County there are 32% of all registered voters who are Democrats, and there are 70% of all registered voters who are Republicans. Now you can understand why we don't have people trying to become the 79th district rep, the 80th district rep, trying to become the majority of county commissioners, wanting to become judge, treasurer, what have you, at the county level, because the registration is so skewed against Democratic candidates. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't get out and vote, particularly this primary now. We have governors coming up.
We do.
We have 6 candidates that are still out there for governor. We have 6 candidates running for lieutenant governor. And if you want to vote for one of those folks, which I hope you do, get out and vote. You're going to have to find out something about them. Commentary about that thought about getting out to vote and what we're looking at in Blair County. I mean,
Well, if voter turnout in primaries to begin with for Democrats is dismal. I mean, for Republicans
with no
it is
candidates,
too.
no wonder.
Yeah, and people just look at it, well, governor, lieutenant governor, I'll get to them in November. Yeah.
And of course, by November, they don't have a choice.
Yeah.
In the primary, we at least have 6 names. Now, if you want to find out, like Marsha and Gillian were talking about earlier, before we got on the air, if you want to find out about a candidate who's running for governor, you can get on their websites. There are various websites, and you can find out what they stand for.
Absolutely.
It's okay to hear somebody speaking about, I want to be your governor and so on and so forth, but if you want to know what they stand for, do they support unions? Do they support women? Do they support anti-discrimination? Do they support voter rights? You got to do that. You just can't wait till November, because by then the choices are made.
I just had read an article. It was a national article about Pennsylvania politics in the 9th Congressional District. Bill Schuster's federal congressional district is one of the most, it's the most Republican district in Pennsylvania. So people locally, maybe they think that everyone believes the way they do, and you're probably right. Because, a lot of people here have concluded the Republican Party is the party to join. And, we've touched on some of the issues, and certainly in my mind, it doesn't make sense. It seems like they're voting against their own self-interest. But, it's a problem. And part of the problem is reflected in the status of our president, President Obama. I talk to people all the time that I'm wondering where are they coming from with this information they're getting. I assume it's from Fox Television, but maybe I don't know where it's coming from. But for example, President Obama has deported more illegal immigrants than George W. Bush did in his 8 years. President Obama has
so far.
Right now, has deported more immigrants. And when I said that to a group of people that I know are Republican, they just couldn't believe it. Well, that has to be a lie. Well, it's not a lie. I mean, it's factual.
What they're listening to is a lie.
Well, you see,
exactly.
And that's our big problem. I think we, as a Democratic Party, have got to get out there and start refuting some of this stuff, and also putting forth the things that we know to be true, such as he's deported more immigrants than Bush did in all of his 8 years, and he's done it in 4.5 years. I mean, if we don't counter, then there's an old adage, repetition strengthens and confirms.
But who are you
Good or
going to
bad?
who are you going to counter to?
Well,
Most
the public.
people don't talk
But
about
I mean, let's
politics.
get on the air. Let's get on our show. Let's send letters to the editor of the Altoona Mirror and challenge the lies and half-truths that are coming out in droves from the Republican Party. And you notice one thing, from Mitch McConnell and John Boehner all the way down to the county Republicans, they have the same script, the same wording
Absolutely.
on every issue. They don't ask the chairman of the Republican Party in Blair County, what's your independent thought? They have their list. Here is what you're to say.
Yeah, Obamacare is a great example. Locally, I don't really hear much about Obamacare. Now, I'm making this assumption because I don't hear anything. I assume it's actually working. I don't know. I mean, does anyone know actual examples?
There was a very small article hidden in the Altoona Mirror saying that Obamacare especially is helping our citizens between the ages of 45 and 55, especially people who have lost jobs, are in the process of looking for another job and have no insurance. They can't pay for the COBRAs, as everybody around this table knows how high COBRAs are. If you lose your job and you try to do the COBRA route.
It's ridiculous.
That group of people especially. Now, the younger people are getting on too, but as of right now, the biggest group that's being affected positively by Obamacare are people that have lost their jobs between the ages of 45 and 55. And it was in the Altoona Mirror. It was buried in the middle of the paper somewhere and down the corner somewhere, but it was in the Altoona Mirror.
Well, unfortunately, though, Governor Corbett has made it hard for many people to enjoy the benefits of Obamacare because he has stripped out the expanded Medicaid portion,
which is
of
$1 billion
Obamacare.
he's turning back.
Yeah,
That would save
supposedly.
Pennsylvania money.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's the argument. Well, it's my taxpayer money. Well, I mean, in a way, that's an accurate argument, but not really, because we've paid these taxes, and Governor Corbett's choosing not to get the money back.
And
most of the major hospitals in the state of Pennsylvania are lobbying Corbett, saying, please take this money. This is good for the hospitals in Pennsylvania.
He's turned his back in arrogance. $1 billion a year, that means we're paying double now for Medicaid.
Right. Well, if people out there maybe don't realize it, if you're, first of all, with regular Medicaid, I mean, this has been around before Obamacare, so many of the people were excluded. The only ones who really could get that were young, working people, the ones you're describing, Marsha. If you had children, you might have been eligible for Medicaid. The children themselves were eligible. If you were disabled, you were eligible for Medicaid. But for the vast bulk of the people, they couldn't get on Medicaid to begin with.
Right.
It's just that's the way Pennsylvania has set up the rules. Now, under Obamacare, if you earn $5,000, if you're a single person, you earn $5,000 up to about $15,000. You, under Obamacare, automatically could get Medicaid. Unfortunately, this is what Governor Corbett has stripped out. He's waiting for Healthy PA, a program that he's substituting.
Which you and I were at that workshop they had.
And maybe that'll get approved, but it won't be approved until maybe 2015. I think even Governor Corbett is saying that. And it's 100% federal reimbursement in 2014 for Medicaid. I mean, we're basically just losing that money. And if you're a family of three, you actually could earn up to $27,000 and still be eligible for Medicaid.
And which you're not now.
Which you're not now, and you could have been if Governor Corbett hadn't thrown in this Healthy PA initiative.
See, that's the arrogance of it. And he wants to also put a stipulation that you've got to have a job. You've got to be
looking for a job.
How do you define looking for a job? Honestly,
that's the issue.
How do you prove that?
Well, I was going to say, my wife is one of the Obamacare success stories. She lost her job when the Ramada closed up. Her COBRA was over $600 a month for a single person.
Right.
Now, with our income, she got roughly the same coverage. People are talking about, well, you're going to lose your coverage and you're going to lose your doctor. She picked up almost identical coverage. Now, the trade-off is she has to pay a little more for specialists, but her prescriptions are a lot less, her regular office visits, and 50% less than what Cobra wanted. I mean, $600 a month, she couldn't have afforded it.
And once again, there was a federal law passed, also went to the Supreme Court, where they said that Obamacare is constitutional, absolutely constitutional. A Democratic president was not elected once but twice, who said he was going to do national health care. He got the Obamacare thing passed, and now all the Republican governors, Corbett's not the only one, have done everything they can to block the implementation of this bill. And my personal opinion is this is treason.
Yeah.
This is absolutely treason, very simply, because this is a federal law that was passed for the benefit of the citizens of this country, and these Republican governors, including Corbett, are trying to block the implementation of it. Just to give you an example, one of the new tricks that they're doing is there's these people called navigators. Navigators are to help people that aren't particularly computer savvy, who have a hard time getting on the website. They sit down with them, they go through their options, they try to help people get their health insurance based upon, what they can afford and this and that and the other. In a lot of the Republican states, they're blocking the use of navigators, even though they have federal money that funds them, that the state doesn't have to pay any money for these navigators. And there's certain states that have required them. In Ohio, they are prohibiting them from comparing and contrasting coverage.
They have scripts that they have to go by.
Exactly.
And that's against the law.
Exactly.
Well, and I went on the website, the marketplace for a person, and I ran into questions. Really, it had to do with the composition of a family, what the rules were.
Right.
When I went in to see who I could actually talk to, there's an 800 number, and you can call an 800 number to get clarification. But if you want to talk face-to-face to a person, to bring in your documents, Blair County has
we
no
don't have
one.
it. There are two in Huntington.
There's
two in Huntington.
Places in Huntington. There's one place in Cambria County,
but none in Blair County. That's because the governor isn't about to do that.
Right.
In fact, here in Blair County, they keep bringing up Dr. Zane Gates's substitute program, and I'm not even clear what his program is, whether it makes any attempt to be integrated with Obamacare. We've been fighting about Obamacare for 5 or 6 years, and now we have this substitute thing. I mean, I'm interested in it if he or someone on his behalf would explain more details about it.
He's been going around the state doing that. But Marsha, when you talk about the Republicans and their attempts to, not only try to get rid of Obamacare altogether, but to deny certain services. Little known, but very little reported too, at the Republicans' big conference they had about a month ago, they all agreed that Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, is the law of the land, and they should stop trying to get rid of it totally, but they should work on changing things within it. Now, had they done that, when the Affordable Care Act was first presented to the Congress, if they'd have said then, okay, we don't like what's happening, we don't like some of these things, here are our amendments. But they wouldn't do that. They voted en masse, except we were able to sneak a few Republicans. We were in charge of the House at that time, too. But we had to have enough that we could sustain, a winnable vote. Yeah. But why didn't they come forth then and say, why don't we work on this together? Obama said to them, if you have suggestions, bring them up. But now they're going around the backside like Corbett is, and denying people things.
Yeah, and overlaid, I've said this many times in this program because it's not heard very often, the World Health Organization rates United States health care as not the best in the world. Maybe it's the best in the world for our citizens who have enough money to afford all of the care offered.
Oh, yeah.
But there's so many people that don't really get any medical care. Right. And they bring down our national statistics. Now, I don't know how many people out there care about it. A lot of people here in Blair County, because of the income level, I suspect, are part of that group that really gets very little medical care.
It's unfortunate that too many people don't become interested in something until it impacts them personally. And that's why some of these
Absolutely.
issues we talk about on the show don't impact somebody who's making $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year, because they're not suffering through that. They don't have family that's being denied. They don't have transgender relatives and all that who are being discriminated against. It's only the people who seem to be personally affected that begin to become zealots or even show an interest in something. And I wanted to make a comment before we get, because we have intertwined with this the overview of the candidates for the primary. We do have a Democratic woman from down in McConnellsville, and her name is Elena Hartzog, and she's running against Bill Schuster. Now, she's going to be at our Democratic committee meeting on Monday, March 3rd, out at Friendly's restaurant. And she's going to present herself to the committee and let you know why she's opposing Bill Schuster for U.S. Congress. So we really welcome that. And so just so you know, if you hear anybody saying, well, he's unopposed this time, well, we're going to have someone who's got to get through the primary. And that's the one candidate, and I don't know if there's anything else on the there was a person who I understand is an independent who wants to seek Jerry Stern's seat. But, you know, we're supporting Democratic candidates, so if somebody would come out and say they're a Democrat. While we get this notice for the second break, and when we come back, we will go through the remaining issues before the panel.
The United Way of Blair County works with local organizations to help people of all ages. By teaming up with Meals on Wheels, the United Way makes a difference in the lives of our seniors.
The program annually serves about 150,000 meals to over 625 consumers. We deliver meals 3 days per week.
Meals on Wheels volunteers deliver a hot meal with a warm smile.
I wouldn't have anybody to talk to because they're very nice. They bring the food in.
With your help, the United Way can make a difference right here in Blair County.
We're all in it to help each other. So by helping us, we're able to help others, and we're all living united.
Give, advocate, volunteer. Support the United Way. For more information, visit unitedwayofblaircounty.org.
Appear on a show between now and election. Okay, thank you very much. And returning to our Democratic panel on plain speaking, we were talking a little bit about the candidates. We did mention we have a candidate to oppose Bill Schuster on the Democratic side, and I don't know if we want to get into a prolonged review of the credentials of each of the candidates unless we would have them for all. Now I know with Elena, she's the only candidate, but like we have Wolf and we have McCord and Allison Schwartz and we have John Hanger and
Katie
McGinty. And I think what we should probably do, if we want to spread the word about candidates, maybe we should have a review of each of them with their positions. Would the panel disagree with that? Now, I know you had an issue you thought might transcend the whole political process about the job thing.
Oh, yeah, I wrote a piece just last night, actually, on Keystone Politics about Tom Wolf. And he, as part of his economic plan, would like to start really investing in Pennsylvania companies, in local Pennsylvania companies, as opposed to, governors in every state do this, play this game where they go try to woo companies from other states to bring in new jobs. And in order to do that, they have to offer a lot of benefits to these companies in the form of, let's be honest, corporate welfare. And so you end up, yes, you bring in jobs, but you're taking jobs away from somebody else. So in the end, you're not really creating new jobs. And you have to pay these companies to come here. So we're losing money in the process.
Tax abatements and everything.
In tax abatements, exactly. And so what he's looking at is no longer, using that practice and just really focusing on investing in Pennsylvania business to really create new long-term jobs.
I was very fortunate when I went to the state committee meeting in Hershey on the 7th and 8th of February I'm chairman of the North Central Caucus, which is a 15-county group, and all of the candidates came. In fact, we had an hour on our agenda. We had 21 people came in who wanted to speak. We had all the Democratic gubernatorial candidates. We had all of the lieutenant governor candidates. We had 3 people running for Congress, which happened to touch some of our areas. So 21 people, you can imagine what they could say in 3 minutes. I limited them to 3 minutes because we only had an hour.
Yeah.
So we went over, of course. But I can tell you one thing right now. Each of them, and I wish to put it this way, not one of them was opposed in any way to unions, that they weren't opposed to equitable treatment of women and have people with different opinions about life and everything, finding jobs and reducing the poverty level and all. So for us to get a better view of their specifics, we will try to give you maybe a 6 or 7 point review of what each candidate had to say. But I was impressed with them all because, in 3 minutes, they're going to say what they think we want to hear, such as create jobs.
Sure.
And such as good health care and such as no discrimination.
Well, I think they all agree we should have a tax on Marcellus shale gas.
That's a big one, yes.
We're the only state that allows drilling and doesn't tax the gas.
Yeah.
And, education, of course, is a weak spot for Governor Corbett.
Absolutely.
I mean, supposedly the Republicans, if anything, they believe in everyone getting successul by their own efforts.
That's right.
And critical in that is education. And here Governor Corbett has reduced funding for Pennsylvania education. And what's happening really is property taxes now are going up because the school districts are stuck.
Yeah.
The state's withdrawing money, and they have to provide the service. So they're trying to get it through property tax.
And just a thought came through my simple mind while I was sitting here listening to George. If we could get enough funding, and I would appeal to the people watching, if you would be interested in funding a few more shows between now and the primary, we could probably arrange to have some of these candidates come here and sit down with a panel and discuss some of their issues. But again, because of limited budget and so on, so if anyone who's watching the show would be willing to contribute to the Blair County Democratic Committee, you could certainly give me a call, Frank Rosenhoover, my name's in the book, or you could drop an envelope in the Democratic office down on 6th Avenue next to the Knickerbocker. And we could maybe have 3, 4, 5, or 6 shows between now and the primary. And those of you who are watching could get a chance to listen to the people personally tell you what it is they think Pennsylvania needs and what they're going to do for us. So we might be out there trying to get a little bit more exposure for our show. And I think that's okay.
Well, I think another characteristic of the Democratic gubernatorial candidates, a Quinnipiac poll showed that every one of them is beating Governor Corbett in their most recent poll. I mean, he's our best selling point.
Yeah, there's no question. And the real sleeping giant is that Sandusky thing. You better believe when this campaign kicks off after the primary, you better believe there are a lot of questions that are remaining. It's just like with Governor Christie over in New Jersey, I had nothing to do with this, and no matter where you go, what's the real story, as Paul Harvey used to say. Mm-hmm. The real story.
The Franklin and Marshall poll in January 2014, they reviewed some of the opinions people have on Governor Corbett and cares about people like you. 32% believe that statement is true. His highest question was, says what he believes. 53% gave him credit for at least saying what he believes.
He believes,
and unfortunately, what he believes are some very interesting things. But yeah, I mean, he's making all our candidates for governor come out because they see a vulnerable governor, and
he's
rightly
the most vulnerable governor.
Yeah,
in
the United
country,
States, the most vulnerable governor.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to get into this a little bit more now. I do want to make sure we cover the agenda. But we will be having people coming in, and we will be focusing more intently as we get near the primary. And like I say, if we can get enough money, we'll have a show every week if we can arrange it. But nonetheless, I want to mention about candidates. If you're interested in supporting a specific candidate, they have to have so many signatures in order to get on the ballot and all. The Democratic Party is going to have a petition signing function on Sunday, the 2nd of March, from 3:30 to 6:30 p.m. at the King's Restaurant on 6th Avenue in Altoona. So if you're interested in coming in and supporting one of the candidates, either for governor or lieutenant governor, you can come in and sign their petition, and there'll be some of us sitting there probably most of the after those 3 hours talking in terms about what we can do to help get the Democrats into the more mainstream of the voters. And then, of course, our general meeting is on Monday the 3rd out at Friendly's. Any other questions? And I want to mention too, Gillian made a point of this too. The fate of the Democrat Party itself is controlled by the people who sit on the Democratic County Committee. And I've announced quite often that I am not going to be a candidate for re-election. And we will inform you as to who has been thinking about it when we get enough information about that in the future. But for people who want to be involved in the actual election of the next county chair, you have got to be a precinct representative, which means between now and the 11th of March, you've got to get a petition. I have them in the office. I have them in my home. And you have to get 10 signatures from people who live in your precinct and get on the ballot. And if you win and you're certified by the County Board of Elections, after the primary, you will then come to the meeting in June and elect a new chairman. But we need precinct reps. There are 97 precincts in Blair County. Each is entitled to 2 delegates, which means we could have 194. I've never seen more than 80. George, have you?
I don't know where all these Democrats are, even the 32,000 that you claim.
Yeah, no, 27,000, 32%.
Oh.
But there are 27,000 registered Democrats in Blair County. 27,000.
Wow.
They never come to the meetings.
I wave my
anyway.
Democratic flag, but the thing is, we don't have enough people who say, I'm a proud Democrat. And that's so important. I am a proud Democrat because I care. Okay. Any other questions on that part of it before we get into this income inequality? That was one that was added. Mm-hmm. Is there anything else that we feel we should really touch on?
Well, do we want to say who the gubernatorial candidates are? Or
yeah, we can do that.
I mean,
okay, yeah.
I mean, you've listened to them all.
Yeah, okay. The candidates are Rob McCord, who's the current treasurer. And to give you an idea, Gillian has some figures on the lieutenant governor polling, and George can give his numbers too. Yeah. But at the Democratic State Committee, we tried to have an endorsement process, but you needed 66 2/3% of all those present to name your person you want to endorse. And when you have 6 candidates, it's pretty hard in 2 ballots to get it. But Rob McCord was the winner in that. But Allison Schwartz was very close. Tom Wolf was next, and then John Hanger, and then Katie McGinty, mm-hmm. and the rest of 2 of them didn't even get a single vote from the candidates. And I think I've covered the main ones now.
Those are the ones.
Jack Wagner has
Jack Wagner has
late
kicked in
entry.
Now from Pittsburgh, and that's another. That's something that
And Jack Wagner is our former.
I've known Jack for years, but
General.
I mean, it just seems disingenuous at this point after we had our meeting in Harrisburg and.
Yeah.
But Jack Wagner is also a candidate. But I think at this point, he was the lowest. He had the least chance of beating Corbett. I think of that panel you have.
Actually, the polls I'm looking at, he wasn't even mentioned.
Yeah, because I don't think he'd announced yet.
Yeah.
No.
But the point is now that for the lieutenant governor, to be very honest with you, I don't remember all the names.
I can tell you, I've got that.
Gillian will give you a real quick rundown.
I will give you a
rundown.
rundown.
The lieutenant governor candidates on where they stand on this Hanger poll.
Harper poll. There was a Harper poll that came out very recently. Now, it should be mentioned that 48% of people are still undecided on lieutenant governor because, and let's be honest, the lieutenant governor race is not one that people don't really pay attention to it as much.
It's like
and any lieutenant governor candidate will admit that to you. But so, aside from that 48% of people, Jay Paterno is leading the field with 17%. Of the remainder of people. He just announced last week, I I wish I could tell you what his platforms are. I'm not quite sure yet, but I know that he's big on education, so we'll see. Next after him is former Congressman Mark Kratzer, then State Representative Brandon Newman, State Senator Mike Stack, and Harrisburg City Councilman Brad Kaplinski, who has some great things to say about Act 47.
Right.
And Bradford County Commissioner Mark Smith, who sits at 2% of the...
Now, I might say at the state committee meeting on the 7th and 8th, because Paterno had not mentioned anything yet, Kaplinski, who has been in Altoona a couple times now, was well ahead of the next nearest candidate. So, I mean, I think if it looks to me like it's going to be a race between Kaplinski and Paterno, probably in all reality.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot about name recognition, but I think especially in the Altoona area, I feel like, you have to look at somebody who's been able to pull Harrisburg through their Act 47 issue,
That's
which is certainly important to us
and
here.
the governorship, I think you're going to look at the 5 top candidates, McCord, Wolf, Schwartz, and Hanger, and McGinty. Those 5. And I think it's going to, between now and then, we'll have as much information as we can get you on them, and we will hopefully have them here and present themselves to the viewers, and maybe we could even have a press conference and maybe a social to get to know people a little bit better. But you really truly have got to try to find out something about whom you're going to vote for.
Absolutely.
And I know it's a chore, but
well, the internet makes it easier. Really, if you just do a search on any of the names, they all have websites. They all list issues. I have to admit, you can go to sleep doing things like that, but I actually find it very interesting to see.
I'll say one thing about George, and I mean, there isn't a topic that he has not researched thoroughly, and I wish I had the same determination and the desire. I mean, I want to know, but I sometimes don't spend as much time as I probably should, and I'm admitting that publicly. And I would say most people would say the same thing, that number one, we don't have enough time. And my famous comment is, well, how many hours of the day do you have?
Well, and that's the problem. That's one of the reasons. Tom Wolf, don't get me wrong, is a very good candidate. In fact, all of the people that I've investigated are great gubernatorial candidates.
Absolutely.
But it just shows the power of money. Because at the beginning, he was very low on the polls, and he's personally wealthy, so he's right away been able to use some of his money to get
And that's a great
publicity.
topic. Perhaps you should have one of the times between now and the election, the impact that money's having. Because it's a horrible, horrible situation nowadays where people are bought and paid for, period. And I wanted to mention two other things very quickly. The nurses, UPMC, is in the Altoona Mirror this morning. They've come to a tentative agreement.
Excellent.
So hopefully that issue's settled. And unfortunately, the tragedy at Penleck is still continuing. And those folks have been out since the 27th of November, not by their choice, but by management's unilateral lockout. And I wish there was more we could do for them. I've been out there and marched.
What is the reason the NLRB is not getting involved in that?
Well, they have a mediator that's involved.
Oh, they do?
Now, and the union has filed charges against Penelec for having violated the confidentiality of negotiatings by putting things in the public, by sending notices to employees at their homes, and so on. And that's uncalled for. Those are unfair labor charges.
Well, are they being taken up the ladder?
But the point is, by the time they were heard and adjudicated, some of these people will be old and retired.
That's true.
If they can get back to work. So please support those folks as best you can. And I see I have the 1 minute signal. Is there any one quick comment anybody wants to make before we sign off?
Well, George was talking about money. Okay. Just to give you an idea, Congress is over 50% millionaires right now. 268 of our congressmen are millionaires. And you have to wonder, how can those people relate to the average problems of the average person? And you know how they always talk about the 1%, the people that have 1% of the money? 67% of the people that are in the 1% have met face-to-face with their senator or congressman.
Mm-hmm. It's all part of, okay, we're winding down, and we thank you very much for watching and listening. And if you have any comments or criticism or something, give me a call at home. I will be glad to translate it to the committee. And remember, the Democrats care. Get out there and protect your own interests. if you're not a Democrat yet, you still have time to register, and we would expect that you will vote, and we'll be back again in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much, panel. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.